de Matar, los telegramas de Talat Pashá y el genocidio armenio. Perdón, pero yo con las luces soy muy mala. Mi nombre es Lala Toutonian, aquí estamos con el doctor Akçam, que es su autor, y empiezo diciéndoles en español que esta entrevista va a ser en inglés. Y el lunes va a estar subtitulada, así que no se preocupen, pueden poner de todos modos, pueden configurar los subtítulos en inglés, me temo, pero para los que saben un poco, quizá les viene bien y los ayuda a comprender. Nos acompaña junto al doctor Akçam, entonces, el doctor Khatchik DerGhougassian, su editor Roberto Montes, Virginia Feinmann, quien fue la traductora, y el doctor Daniel Feierstein. So now I'll change to English. Here we are all. Dr. Akçam, in the first thing, welcome and thank you very much for being with us, celebrating with Diario Armenia and Asociación Cultural Armenia and Audición Comunidad. In the name of all of us, we want to thank you for your book, for your work, and for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. We want to thank also Roberto Montes, because he's the publisher of Debate, which is a sub-label of, am I right? Do you say sub-label of Penguin Random House? So Roberto, thank you very much. Right. So thank you, Roberto, for being with us. Virginia, you did a great job translating the book. I'm amazed. I read both in English and Spanish, and I couldn't believe it. It was really a very hard work to do, I believe. So congratulations on your work. And what can I say about Khatchik and Daniel, which I admire you both so much, and your work, everything you do. And well, again, Daniel was the one, Dr. Feierstein was the one who took the book and brought it to Roberto, and he told him, I believe, Roberto, you should do this. Am I right? Was it like that?
Yeah,
true. All right.
I have something to tell about this, but
please.
Afterwards.
No, please, go ahead.
Okay, no. I'm here just to say thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Roberto Montes. I run the Debate imprint of Penguin Random House in Argentina. It's my pleasure to share this moment with all of you to celebrate the launching of, in our country, of the Spanish version of Professor Akçam's Killing Orders. The celebration for me and for all of us is double, considering our guest here today. So I'm just going to say thank you, which is what I feel I must do, because we could arrive to this moment, we could arrive here thanks to the collaboration of many people. In a sort of chronological order, I have to thank, in first place, to Daniel Feierstein. Daniel not only sent me the book, he also provided all his support to make its publication something absolutely easy, simple, and fluid. Then I have to thank to Virginia Feinmann, for her incredibly careful and delicate translation and for having answered every single question we asked her. Along a lot of time. Bir was much more than a translator in this process. She was largely the editor of the book as well, in a certain way. Finally, I read the book, and in this chronological line, from that moment on, I have to thank to you, Professor Akçam, for your impressive work, but also for your bravery and your fight. Believe me that we Argentines know something about genocides, and then my admiration, in addition to my thanks to you. Later in time, my thanks to Khatchik DerGhougassian for accepting to join us today, and to Pablo Kendikian, who is not here in the boxes, but who is here on behalf of him to the Armenian newspaper and the Armenian Cultural Association for their unconditional support. Last but not least, my friend Lala, my future author Lala, for her work, her enthusiasm, her help, her permanent support, and I have to confess her role as my personal consultant in Armenian affairs. I have to confess ignorance has these kind of things, that when Daniel wrote me to talk me about the idea of publishing Killing Orders, I called Lala, and I'm so sorry about that, and I do apologize indeed. I told her, this guy, Taner Akçam, is a friend of us? A horrible question, but she told me, she began to laugh, and she told me, take it easy. He's more than a friend of us, he's our hero. And that was the habilitation for publishing, the final habilitation for publishing the book. In short, many thanks to all of you for having made possible the publication of Killing Orders here, and from now on for its dissemination, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roberto. Thank you very much for your words. Daniel, would you like to tell us how do you get to the book and thought about publishing it? How was the process? We know about your work, of course, and you thought about it and you said, Roberto is the one who has to publish it. How was it? Tell us, please.
Okay, so first of all, it's really a pleasure being here in this moment, and I would say also an honor. And I will start a bit before, because I guess that one of the things that happened with Taner Akçam is that his role as a hero, as you told, a Turkish scholar working and recognizing the genocide committed by Ittihadism. The problem is that part of Taner's life usually it is the whole picture, and it is difficult to understand that Taner is also one of the most important genocide studies scholar beyond his role as a hero. And that's the most important part, or one of the most important part for me when we met for the first time, and when I realized Taner's work, the whole production of Taner, not only Killing Orders. The interesting point is that Taner is able to include all of the production, in particularly the sociological production, in the understanding of reality, trying to comprehend the problem of genocide. And that's fundamental in all Taner's work, particularly the possibility, even if they are present directly or indirectly, of the main authors in sociology, I would say Norbert Elias, or even Michel Foucault, or Sigmund Bauman. There's a possibility to understand from there the reality of genocide. And then, due my admiration, my dialogue with Taner, one day Taner wrote me, okay, I am publishing a new book, and told me about the story of the documents and the Killing Orders, and what he could done with the production and the analysis, and the possibility to understand the role of these documents. And Tanner was interested, and I think it was really fundamental that the book could be available in different languages as a very important tool in the fight, trying to give justice to the victims and trying to confront denialism. And that was the beginning of this book. I agreed absolutely with Tanner about the importance of having this book in different language. And that was the moment in which I approached Roberto. We knew each other. I guess we don't know personally. That's interesting. We had little exchanges, I guess, a couple of years before. And that's why I proposed, I thought that the book had the right to be published in a very important print house, in a very important publisher, and particularly this collection in Random is one, I would say, one of the 2 or 3 more important in Spanish-speaking language. And we had already published one of Tanner's book in the collection I ran in the University of 3 de Febrero together with Prometeo, the book on the crimes against humanity of the Young Turks. So I thought that the best place for the book was my first approach. I thought, well, I could try with the 2 or 3 more important publishers, but my first approach with to Roberto, and that was great because Roberto was enthusiastic. So I had no need for a second approach. I promised Tanner I will try with at least in the beginning for the 2 or 3 more important, but the first was positive, I guess, because the book deserves clearly. So that was the little story of the book. And then, well, Virginia was in the road and all the possibility of the production. And it is really, I'm really very happy to be able to see the book. Everyone should show the book and to read the Spanish version of the book, which is really extraordinary. That's great. So that's the little story.
Well, that's a lovely story. Thank you very much. And just not also agree with everything you just said, Daniel, but I'll add that here in Argentina, we're a huge Armenian community. So that's why it's so important, this kind of publishings in our country in Spanish language. So that's why I'm so particularly happy with Virginia's work. Plus, there are many books written about it, about the Armenian genocide. We all know about the Turkish denialism. And this book finally brought us some light, brought us some hope. So that's some other thing to add, and very important one, because every time we read something about our history, it's always really sad, of course, and then the mourning, the eternal, never-ending mourning somehow can't end because of the denialism. And I believe this time, this book, these pages, these telegrams, these letters will confront the murderer. So I believe that's the importance of this book. Khatchik, what would you like to add, please?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to meet again, Dr. Akçam. Thank you, Roberto, for publishing the book, and of course, Daniel, for this contribution for memory, truth, and justice. I think that we have in common both the sharing a knowledge about the atrocities, the absolute evil, and also the engagement that nevermore, never again, these things would happen in the world. So just very, very briefly, my field is international calculations. I'm not a historian, but we know that how important it is to study the phenomenon of genocide in a transdisciplinary manner. I mean, of course, the backbone of the genocide studies are the historians. We need them, but how can we understand absolute evil if we don't read Bowman, if we don't read Hannah Arendt, if we don't read so many other philosophers that thought about this phenomenon, this inhumanity of man against man. But it is also important because every attempt of discovering the truth puts us in front of our reality, the actuality. And I remember well, more than probably 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when thinking about the phenomenon of genocide, one of the very well-known scholars in Argentina, Dr. Juan Gabriel Tocatlian, started to his discussion about the dangers and the risks of new genocides in the post-Cold War world. We were at that time, living the so-called war on terror, and we knew that the atrocities that happened, not only because of the terrorists, the haters, but also in name of the terrorism, all the other kind of truths, an international context which was somehow which allowed atrocities against the mankind. That's what happened in the First World War. But when the Armenian the study of the Armenian genocide was crucial in what some scholars called the second generation of genocide studies, to open the mind, to broaden the thinking about the phenomenon of genocide. And I always insisted that the importance of studying the Armenian genocide lays in the fact that it's a paradigmatic case of denialism. I mean, no other genocide has been labeled as the forgotten one as the Armenian, although we know that every genocide starts with denial. Denial is inherent in the genocide, and this we see very well in this book of Professor Taner Akçam. And the second thought, very important in this case, because of the publishing of this book, of this second book of Dr. Taner Akçam in Argentina, it was I think that it was 2013 or 14, a year or two before the centennial of the Armenian genocide, and in a panel with Dr. Aras Anjan, a dear friend and a very known historians, he concluded his conference saying that probably the most important agents for the next generation of discovering the truth, revealing the truth about the Armenian genocide, will be the Turkish scholars. And he was right. Of course, Taner was there at that moment, but it was very important to highlight the role that Dr. Akçam and others will take for two reasons. First of all, scholar professionalism. Who knows better about Turkey, the archives, except the Turks themselves, and they are bright professionals. The second one, of course, the second point, of course, because of their engagement with truth. And, in general, sociological studies, in general, social sciences, and in particular, fields related with genocide, human rights, cannot be studied just for the sake of the knowledge. The knowledge should serve to something, to make life better. And I will conclude with this third point. I don't know if truth makes life better for the victims, you know. But I know one thing I'm sure, that we should continue the struggle for the truth and against denialism, because it's very difficult, you know, especially when we live the world today, the wars, the conflict internationally. It's very difficult to sustain that humanity learns from history, learns in order to prevent, learns that you cannot deny a crime against humanity. It's very difficult, but I'm sure that we should try to make prevention a rule and not the exception, especially when denialism is present, not only in the case of the Armenian genocide, all the genocides, even we can see, you know, revisionism of the Holocaust. And in Argentina, we see that there are attempts of denying what happened in 1976 and 83. So it is important to reveal how the mechanism of denial works in the world, because of this mechanism, the perpetrators will continue their work, and they are continuing their work. This is a very sad and critical moment, especially for the Armenians, 1 year after the 44 days of war. And I'm afraid that, you know, probably we will witness a new offensive of denial of the Armenian genocide, because this happens when you when you lose a war, you know. So because we are going to face this new offensive of denialism of the Armenian genocide, I think that books like the one that Roberto published, like the one that Dr. Akçam studied, wrote, are very important. We'll need them as a tool, because we are engaged for the truth, the memory, and justice. So thank you for inviting me. Thank you again, Dr. Akçam. And I hope that someday we'll have you again in Argentina in person and have this conversation with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Khatchik. Well, Dr. Akçam, whenever you want to do your presentation, please, if you want to share the screen and tell us about the book.
Of course, I thought Virginia also will tell something in Spanish.
The funny thing that you want to tell us in Spanish.
Of course, I can learn a couple words. So.
All right then.
Is it okay if I do it now?
Please do it. Yeah, of course.
Well, no, I was very kindly invited by Roberto and Lala to share this event. I would have shared it as just a watcher, but it's very rare actually that a translator has a chance to explain the process of the work, and I was surprised and very thankful. But I will do this in Spanish. It will be properly translated, I promise, later into English. In the form of subtitles, because I think some examples will only make sense if they're done in Spanish. Bueno, entonces, y Tanner va a aprender algunas palabras en español, además de todos los idiomas que ya maneja. Empezamos el proceso del intercambio y el encuentro con el material en noviembre de 2018. Y eso también un poco me parece que da cuenta de todo lo que nos pasó en el medio para poder llegar hasta hoy con este libro que incorpora una de las maneras más lindas de volver, de retomar las actividades, y que en ese sentido me alegra muchísimo que podamos finalmente tenerlo, ¿no? Tanner hacía mucho calor acá en Buenos Aires, Tanner estaba en Berlín. Yo siempre le mandaba saludos desde un Buenos Aires tórrido y muy caluroso, y él era greetings from Berlin, y así intercambiamos from a very cold Berlin. En ese momento, Tanner, you were there when we started writing to each other, and we sent each other regards from very hot weather here in the south and very cold weather you were traveling around Europe. me acuerdo de esos días cuando empezamos con la idea, gracias a Daniel también que me convocó, como me convoca para muchos de sus libros relacionados con el genocidio, con lo cual me fui especializando y tenía un particular interés. El tema es que este es cuando acordamos la traducción, me fui enterando, un libro escrito inicialmente en turco, de ahí traducido al inglés, y de ahí, en su versión en inglés, saltaba, ¿no?, a toda su proyección internacional, y en paralelo había traductores al francés, al alemán, bueno, yo en la versión española, pero además griego, persa, armenio, bueno, éramos una cantidad de gente trabajando al mismo tiempo. Yo venía un poquito detrás del traductor del francés, Gilles Berton, creo que se llama, Gilles, y entonces ya recibí de Tanner 70 páginas de dudas que Gilles le había planteado respecto de esa versión en inglés traducida del turco, que primero las leí y después fui confirmando que eran las mismas que me surgían a mí, y entonces pude además agregar algunas, porque no solo el libro tiene toda la elaboración teórica de Tanner, sino que además al estar sustentado en un material documental importante, este libro, y una de sus cualidades valiosas es que incluye los telegramas, correspondencia, fragmentos de memorias, fragmentos de diarios, que todas han sido validadas adecuadamente por Tanner y están incorporadas como apéndices, estaban escritas en turco otomano del 1900. Así que no era solo el turco, sino ese turco otomano en particular en el que estaban los documentos, y eso fui descubriendo también cuando a las preguntas de Gilles y a mis preguntas Tanner nos contestaba: esto ni siquiera está muy claro para mí porque es turco otomano del 1900, déjenme verlo. Así que ahí eso le agregaba, digamos, un grado de dificultad. El primer riesgo de esto, bueno, por supuesto al hacer traducción de traducción, era que hubiera un corrimiento de sentido, ¿no? Esto sabemos todos que en cada sinónimo nos alejamos un centímetro o algo de la palabra original, y eso puede tener consecuencias a veces catastróficas. Hay un ejemplo muy lindo que a muchos lingüistas o gente le gusta recordar, que fue cuando los bots acá en una campaña de apoyo orquestada para apoyar al gobierno de Macri enloquecieron y empezaron a emitir mensajes en Twitter. Fue un momento glorioso para las que nos gusta el idioma. No sé si recordás, Lala, caricia significativa desde Hurlingham.
Por favor, tengo el barrio lleno con los grafitis.
Agradecemos el momento en el que pasó eso y reveló un mecanismo, que es que cada bot replicaba un mensaje original que había sido: querido Mauricio, un abrazo fuerte desde Hurlingham, abrazo, la primera traducción pasó a ser
caricia.
Sí, terminó siendo, se fue corriendo cada vez más, terminó caricia, significativo fue, era fuerte, después fue importante. Importante es un sinónimo de significativo, pero no es un sinónimo exacto. Entonces terminamos leyendo caricia significativa desde Hurlingham, y es un hito hoy, es una cuestión icónica, pero bueno, es lo que es el riesgo, ¿no? Que esas sucesivas traducciones respeten de algún modo y terminen produciendo algo absolutamente incoherente. Entonces, bueno, esa era un poco a lo que le prestamos atención en particular, y además en contacto permanente con Tanner, es lo que nos aseguraba. Y recuerdo esta palabra que le comentaba él de convoluted, como de circunvalado, ¿no? Como yo veía esas vueltas entre el calor y todo, y empecé a decir, ¿cómo vamos a sacar esto adelante? Porque además los cargos de los funcionarios otomanos también fueron variando uno tiende a unificar, bueno, pero este no era el director de migraciones, ¿cómo ahora se llama? Bueno, cambió. Y hay algunas aclaraciones sobre la transliteración también y cómo se respetó, que eso, bueno, está en el libro, pero digamos, le pusimos el mismo cuidado, y le puse yo en particular ese cuidado, y hasta lo que me consta los demás traductores también. El segundo riesgo era en efecto la complejidad del material. A veces a mí me parece que es triste que una verdad requiera tanta calificación para ser entendida, ¿no? Las consignas más simples por lo general son mucho más fáciles de adherir, y esto nos ha pasado también, para dar otro ejemplo de la política local, en la adhesión cuando fue el conflicto del campo. El campo es una abstracción, es algo sencillo, todos podemos decir el campo nos da de comer, y en cambio entender las particularidades del esquema móvil de retenciones y los precios internacionales de los commodities, digamos, a veces para acceder a una verdad hay que tener la paciencia, el esfuerzo y la calificación. Entonces ese era un propósito también de hacer esto lo más inteligible posible, lo más claro posible, y evitar esa pereza intelectual que hay a veces, y lo mucho más simple que es decir el genocidio no existió, ¿no es cierto? Porque para todo lo demás hay que informarse, hay que entender, hay que leer, y bueno, y hay que también traducir. Entonces, eso fue algo de lo que yo me sentí parte, por lo menos, ¿no? Me dio mucha pena que en algún punto fuera complejo el contenido, pero que valiera la pena hacerlo accesible. En este libro, por ejemplo, era muy importante entender la diferencia entre el tipo de clave y la cantidad de dígitos de esa clave. Eso no estaba claro, que nos terminó contando Tanner, ni siquiera para él en algunos documentos, ¿no? Y era un punto clave. Entonces, cada traductor, Gilles, por su parte, Gilles decía, bueno, combinación numérique, group numérique, ahí Tanner se va a acordar, tuvimos que yo encontré tipo de clave, cantidad de dígitos, porque había las claves número 1, número 2, número 3, no eran exactamente que fueran claves que tuvieran 3, 2 y una cantidad de dígitos, ¿no? Y entender eso, ya lo van a saber cuando lo lean, era fundamental. Cada uno de nosotros encontró la formulación más clara para eso, y eso es solo un ejemplo. Bueno, y por último, y es un orgullo para mí, haber recibido las galeras, y esto va en la línea de destacar el trabajo de el último eslabón de esta cadena que integramos todos en esta posibilidad de hacer más accesible una verdad, que está conformada por el equipo de Roberto. A mí me escribió Ana Duchman de la revisión de galeras. Para mí siempre es un orgullo recibir las galeras de mi traducción, de mis traducciones, porque apuesto a que no van a tener correcciones. Las conversaciones acá en casa de Cesón, vas a ver que viene blanca, vas a ver que no hay ni una sola marca, porque no me equivoco, porque soy obsesiva, y si marcan algo, bueno, tiene que ver con la norma editorial de ellos, ¿no? Pero esta vez me vinieron 2 marcas rojas enormes, hechas por Ana Duchman, a quien quiero agradecerle, que decían, esto no está en el original. Y en ese sentido también digo, qué bien las editoriales que ajustan, haya una persona que revisó el inglés original y revisó el español y detectó en efecto 2 cosas que no estaban, y yo entré un poco en pánico, fui a buscar, y había sido un intercambio posterior al libro en inglés original que hemos tenido con Tanner, donde decidimos nosotros dos, y en esto creo que así como la tapa argentina es la más linda del mercado internacional, creo que la traducción argentina en esto también es un poquito superior a las que salieron antes, porque decidimos sobre el final agregar 2 párrafos que aclaraban un poco más esta cuestión de los dígitos, ¿eh? Entonces respiré y le dije, no, mira, y le mandé la correspondencia con Tanner, esto lo agregamos con posterioridad, pero bueno, esas 2 marcas me parecieron especialmente precisas y el reflejo de un trabajo serio, así que desde Tanner en primer lugar, hasta Daniel que me convocó, hasta Roberto y Lala que me invitaron a esto, hasta Ana Duchman y los chicos que maquetaron y que hicieron esta tapa hermosísima, quiero agradecer. Siento que todos fuimos, como le decía ayer a Lala en Twitter, eslaboncitos para la revelación de una verdad, para el esclarecimiento, para la prueba de una verdad, una vez más, de la mano de Tanner. Y siento también que así como hubo un esfuerzo de encriptación y desencriptación en estos telegramas, y de codificación que estuvo al servicio del horror y de la muerte y de la destrucción, hicimos nosotros desde el turco otomano del 1900, sin pretender compararnos, pero bueno, también ese esfuerzo con todos los traductores a lo largo de todos estos países, una encriptación, desencriptación y un proceso de desciframiento que estuvo al servicio de la memoria, de la verdad y de la justicia para el pueblo armenio. Bueno, gracias.
Gracias, Virginia. Realmente el trabajo, insisto, me resulta más que óptimo, no sé cuál es la palabra más grande que óptimo, y todo lo que acabas de decir realmente se nota. El tema de los dígitos es difícil, es evidentemente difícil de entender, pero también es lo que da claridad y evidencia la realidad de estos telegramas, ¿no? The fact, as a fact, the telegrams. So now, Dr. Akçam again, after Virginia's words, which were absolutely beautiful, and of the whole process that she did, that, believe me, as I said before, it is immaculate. Tell us, please, tell us, can we start like with some kind of a joke, meaning thinking that this is such a serious, such a tragic problem, such a tremendous thing that happened to us as Armenians, that you are called the big Sherlock Holmes? Is that correct?
It is correct. This was a sentence said by Eric White. Daniel, you may know Eric White. He unfortunately passed away a couple months ago. And when New York Times wanted to interview me and introduce the basic finding of the book, he asked me with whom he should speak. And I named a couple of scholars here in United States. And as Roberto was very suspicious, of course, about the book and about the findings, and the New York Times author, even though he was well-versed in Armenian genocide issue, he published several op-eds in New York Times before, but he wanted to be sure, even though I sent him the documents, we had a long conversation. They have these fact-checking departments, they check the facts, but he wanted to be sure. And he wanted to talk with serious scholars. So I gave the scholar's name from North America, and Eric White's one of those scholars. He was one of the eminent Holocaust scholars in our field. And Eric told him that what I did actually practically the job of Sherlock Holmes. And the term stuck to me. I mean, it's since then really, this was the title of New York Times. And since then, I with pleasure use this term. It is indeed very difficult. It was very difficult to decipher this coding system. This was a really big headache, even to find the proper Turkish language to explain this system to Turkish readers, let alone the English, and because it is complicated, period. So, I think I take this as a compliment. It took me a long period of time. Just, I'll give you an example. The documents that I checked, the number of documents that I checked were around 25,000. So I literally looked each and every 25 documents to find out their ciphering system to understand whether the documents that I found are accurate and correspond to the Turkish Ottoman coding system. So it was really a very, very difficult job. And
yeah, you can tell.
Yeah. Maybe we should really continue the conversation instead of my lecturing or giving a lecture. I like this way of conversation. And before saying anything else, I would like to thank, I mean, with the sequences, how I really reached out to Spanish audience. Thank you, Daniel. I mean, he was really very engaged from the beginning. I was looking publishing house and I approached to him, and he, as he said, also he really wanted this book should be published in Spanish language, and this will be correction of Khatchik. Maybe this is my third book in Spanish language. Shameful Act and the Daniel's publication of the Young Turks' Crime Against Humanity, and this is the third book, and I'm really very, very happy, and I'm thrilled. I thank you all really to make this happen. Roberto, for your interest in the book and publication, and Virginia for your really diligence and this unbelievable careful translation process. With the help of Virginia, I discovered my own mistakes, I have to admit. So the Spanish version has a better quality than the Turkish and the English one, I have to admit. And I have to admit another important thing, don't tell but the other publishing houses, you did the best coverage of the book. I mean, the cover image of the book is really amazing. I really like it very much also. So this is what I have to tell about the book. I don't know how I should proceed. I mean, I can show you something about the coding system, how it worked. I can start with it, or I can tell you maybe some theoretical background on the problem of denial and truth, on the issue, the relation between truth and denialism. You know, maybe let me start from there. Maybe Daniel can, of course, or Khatchik can also contribute. So we have a good conversation here. Usually, we always think that denialism based on denying the facts. The simple belief is there is a truth. This is what we call it in our field, Ramkeyan historian objectivity, that the truth is somewhere, is within the, how they call it, it was in something in a grave, buried somewhere, and historians' job is to go there and dig and find what I did. I mean, to find this document and say, this is the truth, and denialists are denying. So the relationship actually between facts and truth is not so simple. In social science, it is really very contested topic. As a rule, of course, I have to say, as a rule, generally, I mean, everybody thinks that the facts, opinions, and interpretations are considered different things, separate from one another. We would like to believe that the truth rests upon established facts over which there is a consensus. As such, they are not the same thing as opinion or interpretation. We would also like to believe that the practice of denialism in regard to mass atrocities is simply denial of the facts, but this is not true. Rather, there is really a nebulous territory between facts and truth, and the denialism germinates from this territory. Denialism marshals its own facts, and it has its own truth. And this is really, for me, very crucial. Maybe at that stage, let me really share my screen, because I want to go back to an American scholar. I hope you can see my screen. Michel Rolfe Trullo wrote an excellent book on Haiti, and he tried to analyze the silencing, how you can also interpret this as denialism, how we silence, or how the rulers silence the history. And he said, normally there is a 4 stages of 4 moments to create this silencing. The number 1 moment is the fact creation. So denialism makes its own sources. It creates its own archival materials. So when they create the documents, then they assemble these materials together. This is how they make their archives. And then based on these archival materials, they develop their own narratives of the history. And this is then at the end what we call the making of history in the final instance. In Turkish case, as Khatchik rightly mentioned, denialism is a kind of a Turkish particularity if we compare with other genocides. And we have also the moment of destroying and proving the falsity of critical document. This is really a very important Turkish contribution to the process. So based on all these, I would argue the job of historian is not only to discover the true documents, but also to analyze the existing original documents, how to interpret them. They are not really forgeries, or they are original documents. I give you maybe an example to make it clear what I mean here. But this is not working. Why? Oh, this is just an example how you create original material. This is not in the book. This is something, an additional information for you. As everybody knows in our field, April 24, 1915 is the symbolic beginning of Armenian genocide. Okay, on that very day, Ottoman authorities arrested around 200 Armenian intellectuals say about this issue. Here is a document for you. This is an original, authentic document from Ottoman archive. You cannot deny the authenticity of this document. It says a group of Armenian intellectuals, Malumian, Agnuni, Daniel Varujian, and so on and so forth, were taken out of prison and they escaped to Russia. And the document is from that period. So this shows really that the denialism was an essential part of genocidal process, and throughout the genocidal process, they create their parallel original documents also for that. Another important document that I can show you here related to a Armenian intellectual, Krikor Zohrab. He was one of the leading Ottoman intellectuals, and he was also arrested, but in a very later period, summer, and he was taken from Istanbul, took away all the way to Diyarbakir. Today is the highborg of the Kurdish areas, and he was killed there. But today we have a doctor attest from 1915. A doctor went to the place and he examined the body and says he passed away because of the heart attack. And this is a doctor report from exactly the same day as Krikor Zohrab was killed. And not only Krikor Zohrab, doctors, because this doctor examined Krikor Zohrab one day before, and he says, I examined him and I noticed that he had some heart problem, cardiac problems. I gave some medications, but then at the end he passed away. It was not enough. This is a second document for you. This is a testimony of an Armenian priest from the same city. He was taken to the place of the event and he testified that Zohrab had died of a heart attack, and then he explained how Zohrab had been buried according to appropriate religious customs. Now, let's assume another example. This is another document that I discovered. Ottoman authorities informed the daily newspapers of the time, and there was news coverages in the daily newspapers that Zohrab passed away because of an heart attack. And Zohrab's wife in Istanbul wrote later, she informed us that the government informed her also about the heart attack of her wife. I'm sorry, her husband. So now let's assume Daniel gives a homework to the students at the university. There is one side the rumors that Krikor Zohrab was killed by Turkish authorities. This is a rumor. This is a falsification that Armenians created. Of course, for us historians, you know, the evidence for us is the evidence like in a court case. In a court case, you cannot use an hearsay evidence. You have to really use original document to convict somebody. So that is very important. I mean, with the criminal procedures and the historian way of working. And Daniel will send a student, hey, why don't you go to archive and search a little bit on the origin of Kirkor's death? We have the doctor's report. We have the testimony of the priest, and we have the newspapers of the time, and we have the information that we received from the wife of Krikor Zohrab. Please, what is the relation here between fact and truth? So this is only one of the issues that we have to deal with. So the critical scholarship is here very, very important. And I think what I did in that book is not only to find the true document against the wrong documents and so on, but also to contextualize the entire denialist machinery and to show that the relationship between facts and interpretation is complicated than we think. I think this is a good start for a conversation.
Sorry, I was talking and I was silent. I was thinking that maybe this was this example that you just gave, and it's on the book actually. Can we call it that it could have been somehow a way of fake news, of the first fake news, as we are dealing today, nowadays, with fake news and Trump and the whole thing and the whole world and what's going on everywhere. But this was a known fact, or something that it wasn't truth, but there was no way to prove it. And now it's happening with Facebook, for instance, or whatever the new name it is, I don't know. But this poor Zohrab, he died of a heart attack, then he was murdered, then he had an accident. And so it was a fake news, I mean, which is what's going on nowadays. So it was somehow the history repeating itself, as we always say, plus the denialism, which is the actual problem here. Because yes, there are genocides, there has been genocides all over the history, all over the world, and I'm afraid they will continue. But the fact here is the denialism of the Ottoman Empire and Turkey nowadays. What do you think, Dr. Akçam? With this book in particular, will the Turkish, let's say, government power, Mr. Erdogan, will face the truth? Will they know? Will they accept this?
Before I answer that, I will answer. This is an important question, but I would like to hear what Daniel has to say to that complex. It's really a very important topic, so that we have a good conversation.
Okay, thank you, Taner. And now everyone can understand why I was saying that the theoretical contribution of Taner is the same level as his role as a hero, because what he's trying to explain is this difficult relation, which is great in the preface of the book, between truth and facts and interpretation, and the simultaneous debate with positivism and relativism, which are two really problematic approaches, in which positivism used to think that the truth are in the facts and the interpretation only follow the facts. And relativism, on the other hand, used to think that there is only interpretation, misreading Nietzsche, that never said that in that way, that there is no facts, only interpretation. But the complexity of Tanner's approach is that the documents can be falsified, and they are reliable as testimonies are reliable. So that trying to break this idea that the document is the truth, but on the other hand, trying to confront at the same time that there is no truth and that everything is relative and the only we have our interpretation. No, the connection is just more complex, and the extraordinary value of the book beyond the proving of the genocide committed by Turkey is this contribution about the complexity that we can see in many other cases. So in Argentina, we also had this fabrication of facts through documents. In the case of some interviews and some articles created by intelligence services and some people who were tortured, and then the statement about a false explanation of a situation that it was construed as a document. So that's really interesting how to take in account this critical work that Tanner did, and we should do in any genocide case, on any state crime, trying to combine the different sources and trying to create a critical and complex new interpretation of the facts. And that's, in my opinion, is theoretically fundamental. That's why Tanner, in my analysis, I have developed that denial is not correct at the last phase of genocide. And that's my discussion with Stanton, because we have created our periodization at the same time. But my last stage is symbolical enactment, which is something different than denial. And denial could be part of a symbolical enactment, but the symbolical enactment means a creation of a narrative that re-legitimize the objectives of the genocide. And this kind of narrative is not only created with lies, it includes also some elements of truth, but interconnected in this complex narrative that is construed as a symbolical enactment of the genocide. So Tanner is not only a hero as a Turkish scholar recognizing the genocide, but also as a great scholar confronting with the symbolical enactment of the genocide committed by the Turks and creating another possible narrative, including another analysis of the different sources and elements that we can use as historians, as sociologists, as social scientists, trying to unpack the situations. So that's my little.
No, thank you so much. Thank you, Daniel. Yes, Khatchik, you want to say something?
This is it's bright. I of course I fully agree with Daniel. This this meticulous work of saying which document is true, which this makes life even more difficult, because we really are caught between narratives which are based supposedly on facts which are revealed truths. So I say the job is titanic, but maybe, Daniel, the enactment is not the highest stage. The highest stage is when the enactment is accepted by the victim. And that's where denial becomes truth and truth become non-existent. My fear is that, and I'm coming back to, the Armenian genocide, as the genocide has not been recognized and we suffered a cruel defeat in the last war, and this new stage of denialism might lead to the enactment of denial. And if we are not aware, and we don't have courageous scholars and professionals of revealing the truth, we might end up, because of social media, because of the fake news, like by the end saying that, we're sorry, we were wrong for the last 100 years, it was not true, and the genocide did not exist. That's the stage where denial becomes truth. And it's a threat. I think that it is a threat. We should not, overlook what you said, Daniel, and what Taner Akçam with this book, shed as a light. Be aware it's not easy in the case of mass atrocities to be with the truth, to be engaged with the truth, justice, and memory, because those who commit these atrocities are there, to again do it what they did in the past.
Thank you, Khatchik. Now, this brings me really to other question what Lala asked, and I would like to really bring another important theoretical point, which is well known among academicians, but it is better to repeat this in this context with an example, namely the role of power to determine what the truth is. Very simple question. I mean, you can ask anybody, what is the major difference between Holocaust denial and Armenian genocide denial? The same methodology, same argument, and same, I mean, you can see a pattern. In Argentina, you can see the same pattern also. And there are enough studies to compare this pattern in different cases. Why then nobody takes so seriously when a Holocaust denialist comes up and denies the Holocaust, but this is not the case in Armenian genocide. I mean, Armenian friends of mine, they remember the time in United States that even in the universities, in academia, we had always this story of both sides. There is a Turkish side of the story, and there is an Armenian side of the story. And scholars like myself, these are defenders of Armenians. They tell the Armenian version of the story. And then the others, Turkish version of the story. Even this usage of terminology, the Turkish version and Armenian version of a history is insane. You don't have in Holocaust Jewish version of the story and German version of the story. And then the idea developed here in the United States is, we have to listen both sides because we are rational individuals. We have to be objective to both sides. This is still logic. And why this logic emerges? Because of one thing, really because of the power. So the power relation is very important to determine what the truth is. And the other important element, it also shows, to fight denialism is not only the work of academia. So I can bring hundreds of thousands of documents that clearly shows the genocidal intent of the Ottoman authorities. But do we really believe that the Turkish authorities deny Armenian genocide because of the lack of documentation, that they will be convinced if we bring a couple more documents. So it's impossible. It is a power struggle also. There is the role of power in determining what the truth is. I'll give you an example. So this is the bridge that I wanted. I would like to share again screen and give the example to you. I hope I was able to share. Am I correct? No, I haven't done it yet. Let me share the screen. This is a telegram that I discovered, and this is a topic in the book also. This is a telegram from 4th July 1915, and Bahattin Shakir is the person like Himmler compared to Holocaust. I mean, the guy who practically organized the genocidal process. He was the member of Ottoman Union and Progress Party Central Committee, and he was the head of the special organization that in charge of killing Armenians. This is like the Einsatzgruppen that the Germans sent to the front to exterminate the Jews. And this is a telegram. The Turkish authorities deny the originality of this document. When this document was quoted in one of the indictment, this is here, maybe back story is also important. In Istanbul, 1919, there was a tribunal against the perpetrator of Armenian genocide. And in that tribunal, the prosecutor quoted from a telegram. We have only the official gazette. We didn't have the document. And in that indictment, prosecutor quoted from this telegram that I was talking about. Are the Armenians being dispatched from there, being liquidated? Are these troublesome people you say you have expelled and dispersed, being exterminated, or just deported? Answer explicitly. So it's obvious a telegram that the guy coordinates the killing procedure and asks the local governor of the other city whether he already exterminated or sent somewhere to be exterminated. Turkish authorities say that this is the Kanguru trials, the Istanbul military tribunals. This is the victory justice, and nobody should take it seriously, and nobody can show us the original of the document. There is no such a telegram. It never existed. Public prosecutor invented this. This is not true. So then I found the document in this private archive. The story is in the book, Grigor Gergerian's archive. And it says very clear, are the Armenians being dispatched from there, being liquidated, and so on. So, and I also proved that these documents, this is not from Ottoman archive, this is somewhere else. So you have to confront the critique. The Armenian made this up. Of course, they can make it up. Then this is my Sherlock Holmes work. As you can see here, the 7447, for example, this is Arabic 4-letter ciphered number. It equal with certain words. This is the ciphered telegram of the period. And the officials on that time, they deciphered these documents. And this is how we were able to read the content of the document. And this is then what I did in the archive. I found, for example, they used the deport 4889 in that document, sent off, or Sir 2469, or the other brother 8299. And I went to Ottoman archive and checked the documents from the same time period. And I indeed discovered that the Ottoman authorities use the same coding system. So as you see here, the army, this is the on the yellow one on the screen on the right side is an Ottoman document from the Ottoman archive. You can find it in Istanbul today. And in that document, as you see here, 8519 is equivalent for this word. This is the Armenian. And this is exactly 8519 in this telegram that I discovered in this private archive. So you can't debate the authenticity of this document. Okay. What about the role of power that I tell you? Now, you asked me, what is the reaction of Turkish government to my book? Of course, one strategy is silence, usually. And second strategy is, as Daniel also told us, is the interpretation. Every document gives you a way of interpretation. And this is what Turkish authorities, they have an institute in Ankara. And this institute had to really challenge, and they had to write something about this topic. And he says, the author who criticized me, if we are to interpret this telegram, so the Bahattin Shakir's telegram, originally they were denied the originality. Now they cannot deny the originality. It is possible to deduce that Shakir learned that some unwanted massacre had taken place in the city Harput, was bothered by it, and wanted to inquire about the issue in order for the cessation of the massacre. Oh, he was sending this telegram not to coordinate the killings, but to possibly, he heard about the killings and he wanted to stop this killing. How ridiculous this interpretation might be, but at the end, my interpretation against this interpretation, and it shows also fight with denialism is a fight in the public sphere to discover, to take the power of the argument. And you have to really launch a power struggle. And this is very clear indication that the fight with denialism is not only an academic endeavor. It is not only a job of academicians, but it is really a public fight. It is a fight of every individual for the truth. So truth will establish only if you really have the power in your hand. And this is, I think, another important issue to notice. And I hope my book will really, contribute a lot to those who are fighting for truth and justice. And this is also not a process that ends. We should not also think Daniel can tell this more on that topic, or Hajik. History never finishes. Narration, the history writing, is always a continuous process, relates to our current fight, relates to our current seek for justice and truth. This is a continuous process, and we visit again and again the historical fact to reconstruct the history in order to challenge certain problems that we are facing today. Trump's fake truth story is one example, and the other best example is, you may have heard this incredible debate in the United States about the Project 1619, New York Times project that they, especially after the Black Lives Matter movement, New York Times started 2019, a huge project saying that why don't we start the beginning of United States, not 1776 with the Declaration of Independence, but 1619 with the arriving of a ship from Africa that brought around 30 slaves to Virginia. And in that entire debate, there is no one single document that is discovered now. Historians, they had these materials. What the newspaper managed, and this became a part of a public debate, and the argument is very simple. If we want to fight racism today in the United States, we should see and understand that it is in the founding process of the United States. It is within the Declaration of Independence 1774. So we have to reconsider the story of foundation process. So this means, I mean, for Turkey and for anybody who is fighting for truth and justice, especially, and against who is against racism here in the United States, we should see that we have to revisit the same materials, maybe again and again, to reconstruct as a different story to fight the injustices and that we are facing today in our society. So this is a continuous process that will never end, actually. This is another important issue that I would like to highlight.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as you well said, you and Daniel actually well said before, denialism creates its own narrative, right? Because it's like the fact is to deny the truth. But there's some other really important topic to add, I believe, to this fact, besides the denialism. And I'm afraid we don't have much time left, but at least I would like to hear your words about this, which is, we are talking, this is something I always thought. I always thought about the Armenian Genocide and the Ottoman, which is, we are talking about the founding fathers of a nation. So we are talking about, like, let's say in Argentina or any country, that we are talking about the founding fathers of the country, of the nation. I won't say nationalism because it's a horrible word, but we're talking about that they would have to accept that they were murderers, that they were liars, that they were thieves, that they were killing children. And this is some other fact that I believe Turkish government, and I won't say the people, but the government can't face, because we are talking about the founding members of a nation. So this is a very difficult topic we are dealing with as well. What do you think, please?
I have to unmute myself. I think we have the same problem almost in all nation states, the establishment of the nation states. This is the exact debate that is going on here in the United States. Thomas Jefferson or James Adams, all others, those who wrote these 1776 Independence Declaration that starts that each individual free and equal and so on and so forth. And these individuals were the slave owners. I mean, I didn't know that Thomas Jefferson, when he was penning these Declaration of Independence, one of the slaves was in front of the door and serving him, and it was his son from a slave African American. And according to law, the mother was important, not the father. So Thomas Jefferson's son was a slave of Thomas Jefferson, and even in his deathbed, he never left his 150 or 200 slaves free. So what is the problem? I think, Daniel, you may say that, or the Khatchik, the same story about Argentina. I mean, on the founding process of Argentina, we don't have a different Same problem we have. The founding fathers are at the same time the important carrier of certain mass atrocities, historic wrongdoings. What makes Turkish case difficult than the others? One important difference is, of course, the continuity. The party that established Turkish Republic is the same party that organized the Armenian genocide. There is a linearity. This is a big problem. We didn't experience a change within the ruling elite. This is a very important point in facing history and opening up of society towards a democracy, whether you have a change within among the ruling elites or not. So in Turkey, we have a direct linearity. This is number one. The same party organized Armenian genocide, established Turkish Republic. This is like, you know, after Second World War, Nazis established the Germany. It is tough. But you can find these kind of examples in other nations also, not maybe in that gravity. The problem here in Turkish case is this inability of the nation to put a distance between itself in the current position and its founding fathers. This has something to do with the development of a democratic identity over a period of time. A society, actually, if it develops a certain democratic identities for itself, that certain reference points to define itself, that goes beyond the founding stories, that goes beyond the stories of their heroic founding fathers, then they were able to put distances. The Turkish problem that we have is the lack of democratization that we experienced in Turkey, that lack of the respect of human rights in society. And this gives the people in Turkey a strong identification with their founding fathers. They think that any attack, any critique of the founding father is a critique of them, their selves, that this is a destruction of their own identity. I think this is the major problem. And we have a catch-22 situation between democratization and facing history in each country. We observe this indeed. The more democratization, the more you are able to facing history. The more you face history, you have the possibility to put the distance. And I think this is the process that we experience in every country. And for Turkish case, my argument following the American case, we need a new founding story. I mean, I don't mean to replace the old one with a new one, because old one is a homogenic one. The heroic fighters for liberty, emancipation, and independence, and let's scramble this and put another monolithic, homogeneous, our founding story. No. How we can really develop a conversation in the society that creates spaces for those who suffered during that period also, that they are able to see their stories also, be part of these founding stories, be part of this foundation process. And this is only possible with a public conversation. So we should really think about how we can create a heterogeneous, a multi-plural remembrance that create spaces really for every different group that had different experience throughout this process. A Turk might be very proud of their nation state. They should have, but at the same time, they should learn the cost of that also, against whose suffering you created this. I think this is the process. This is the this is there is a philosophy mainly in religion. It is not important to find the God. It is, the absolute truth. It is the travel. It is the journey that is important, that we do during, what we learn is the journey itself is more important than the discovery of the God at the end. So this is, I think, what we have to emphasize in our work. And this is what Turks needs to learn. A conversation with Armenian, a conversation with Kurds, a conversation with Greeks, with everybody who had a different experience in this founding period. So I stop here.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And I believe you said the key word or the key topic, which is identity. It's about identity. It's about the Turkish identity. It's about the Armenian identity, the Kurd, the Greek, the Jew, the Jewish. I'm afraid I can speak for hours. I can hear you for hours. And I believe all of us will agree, people on the other side of the screen, Khatchik, Daniel, Virginia, Roberto as well. But we gotta end, I'm afraid. I would like to end this conversation, not just thanking you for everything, because I believe I can cry, believe me, I'm that emotional, but with your own words, let me translate it because I have it in Spanish here. But you say that there's this Turk proverb that says something like, I won't find it now, something like, the truth shall remain, or the truth will see the light, something like that. Am I right?
Yes.
So it's your own words. And look what happened. It happened several times that I had these confrontations with the Turkish ambassador here in Argentina. And he said the same words that my grandparents used to say, because my grandparents, the four of them, lived in the Ottoman Empire. So we all speak the same language. We all believe the same thing. We need to dialogue. We need to dialogue. And I believe your work, and I believe this last book of yours, this proof will finally, hopefully, lead us to that end. So then again, thank you very much. Muchas gracias, as we say in Spanish. In Armenian. Thank you, Khatchik. Gracias, Daniel. Gracias, Virginia. Gracias, Roberto. Gracias al Diario Armenia. Diario Armenia is in its 90th anniversary, so this is like the key thing we did with this interview. And Audición Gomiraz as well from Uruguay and Asociación Cultural Armenia. I want to thank you all, because of this has been like very rich. As I said, I can continue for hours just listening. And actually, I will ask you to meet again somewhere here in Argentina, somewhere else.
I'm looking
this way by screen, however, but well.
Thank you so much again for making this book available. Thank you so much for all your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much. Muchísimas gracias a todos.